So this is kind of the moment of truth as far as okay, that was a nightmare. So it's the next morning. I haven't even got ready to come out here, but I thought of something when I was laying in bed this morning, and I'm really hoping that it worked. And this is gonna set my day right here. Wow. Man, did I get lucky. So at least it turned over. It wouldn't even turn over before. I'm gonna have to figure out what's going on with the dash here because not all the lights are coming on. But the problem was that up in here, you can see that white box up there. I took one of the boxes off when there's a bolt there, and that came off okay. And the other one, I loosened the bolt all the way and I struggled to get that box out and I couldn't get it out, and so I just left it. And the reason I was trying to remove it is so that I have more space to pull the dash away, because that harness keeps you from pulling the dash all the way out. And I completely forgot that I loosened that one bolt, and so I just cranked it down by hand and it actually worked. So I'm gonna tighten it the rest of the way and then try to chase the issue as to why I'm not getting gauges, all the lights to come on up here. But at least it turns over and I can drive this thing away, so I got lucky there. So I finally figured out what the issue was after hours and hours of doing research and crawling up underneath here and over there, disconnecting wiring harnesses, reconnecting them, following wires. Nothing seemed to work. And even though I was doing that, when the lips here of the dash were connected to the bolts, I didn't have them tightened down all the way, but they were making contact. And I found out that it could be a ground issue. So what I ended up doing is behind this plate, this metal plate inside here, there is a grounding wire. There's two of them. So that was real hard to get at. So I took that off, the grounding wire, and I sanded the paint off behind it and then reconnected it. And then on the other side, I have a grounding wire here. I'm gonna have to touch that up a little bit, but so I sanded that, and then there's two back behind this plate right here. This is plastic on the outside, but it's metal on the inside. And there's one up here and there's one here. With the dash pulled all the way back, you can get to that rather easily. So I took that nut off and the ground wires and sanded behind that. In addition to that, on both this side and the other side where the connection point is, I sanded off the paint. I sanded off the paint behind on this black lip here, and then I also sanded the paint on, keep moving up, sanded the paint here on the actual body of the vehicle. And then I tightened the whole thing down really tight, obviously it needed to be anyway, and everything worked fine. So now everything comes on. The noise that was coming from the black unit there stopped. All the controls work. I tipped those out looking for issues. So now I've got to put all this back in place, and I've got to put that everything else, including the airbag, back in place. But I had to hook that up to make sure that that wasn't part of the issue. So yeah, it was nothing more than grounding. And had I maybe tightened these bolts up to begin with, which I didn't want to do because I was trying to test the vehicle to see if it would work, I might not have had to do hours and hours of pulling my hair out. So lesson learned. Next time, tighten the bolts down before you try to fire it up and see if it works. But like I said, it was making contact, apparently just not enough contact. So that's that, and now I get to put all of this back together. All right, day 4. After finding my grounding issue yesterday, I decided not to work on this anymore. I worked on some other things around the house to break up the monotony of working on this thing, and I was pretty frustrated. Things were starting to go wrong, little things, so that was a sign to just work on something else. I do have to put this all back together. The middle console cannot go back in today because I need to pull back this part of the carpeting, put some POR 15 on any rust spots, and then wait for it to dry overnight. I had to cut the carpeting down the middle here where the console goes in order to peel it back. It was just a lot easier to do that than deal with one huge piece of carpeting. No big deal because the console will cover up the cut line. The engine turns over as it should. Everything is now working. I've got no engine lights, and it sounds good. So the only problem that I had in the engine bay, I had to actually just zip tie my AC lines together. No matter what I do, how much force I put on them, I just can't get those things to connect. So I've got to take it to one of the mechanics I use. He's going to put refrigerant back into this and then check the system, because I know I've got a leak somewhere. I need that taken care of before I get on the road. And then he's also going to put in my brown dog motor mounts. The ones I have on here, the one on the right side actually melted, so I need to put in the rubber brown dog motor mounts. So he'll do that for me as well. And other than that, that's pretty much it. Just put the dash back together. It actually looks a lot worse than it is. All right, it's a little bit windy, so things are falling from the sky in my garage. So I'm going to get to it, and after I'm done today, it'll pretty much be in drivable condition, but tomorrow I'll button everything up and get this thing back out on the road. While I'm installing this, and I'm sure everybody owns Jeeps and sees these little red pieces of felt or whatever they are in between or around the screw holes. So those are there to prevent squeaking, and it's like a sound barrier, if you will. I don't have anything like this, but what I'm going to use are these little felt pads, and I'll just put holes in them. And these are just, they're sticky on one side, but that doesn't matter. But this is just left over from something that a manufacturer had in their facility, and these are just throwaways. So it's just a bag of those, and I'm going to use them even in the points here that the dash clips go into. I'll probably insert these onto the back of the dash clip, and then that way it can go in there without pushing it all the way through. But I'm going to do it in all the key locations, even if it's got red stuff already on it. And that way I will try to prevent some of the squeaking. Mine doesn't squeak too bad actually as it is, but just since I'm going to be out on the road and going over a lot of rumble strip type roads, I will probably be thankful that I put in the extra effort to do this. But if you have squeaking in your dash, that might be one of the reasons why. Since all the plastic components are out, now is a good time to go ahead and douse everything in Armor All. So I did that for absolutely everything that I took out of the Jeep. I did this when I first bought it, and it worked out really well. Keeps it clean a lot longer and makes it look good. So may as well do it. Everything's out, easy to get to, easy to clean. So once I clean them off, I'll probably douse them one more time and clean that off and then install them. So I've got the dash installed, and I didn't want to film putting it all back in because I took my time doing it. I had a bunch of other things that I did in between, like pull back the carpet, put POR 15 on any areas that were rusted or looked like they needed to be sanded. and I also cleaned up all the components here. But a few tips on how to reassemble this so you don't have to take parts back off like I did. When you're reinstalling this, put in this vent panel first, and then make sure that this trim panel is back there, tucked in there as well when you do that. Then you can put in the airbag cover, and also the glove box cover. So on the driver's side, there is a sequence to that as well. It's probably more important than the other side just because there's more parts involved. But you want to install this cover for this vent siding along with the trim panel again. And then after that, you definitely want to install these two components here first before you do much else. These two have to go in first if you want them to go in easy. And then from there, you can put on the front part of the top part of the dash. You can put the cluster gauge in and then put this component on after that. You want to put this on before you put any of these parts underneath on, because you've got a rubber boot that goes around here and you want that to sit in there so that when you do put on the metal plate and then also the plastic plate over the top of it, everything goes together. If you try to put this part on after the fact, it is a huge pain, and I ended up taking these parts off to get this part on. And then also it just makes it easier if you install this after the fact, or else you're messing around with this rubber boot and you really don't want to do that. So again, you want this first or second, this first or second, along with this trim piece. Put on the top part of your dash, cluster gauge, top front part of the dash, and then after that install the bottom metal plate along with the plastic cover. And this thing here goes on last, your middle part of the console. That just snaps in, so that comes in and out really easily. So that's pretty much it. I'm gonna install my, like I said, console tomorrow along with all the other components, and lay the carpet back down, and I should pretty much be ready to go after I put in the seats. Alright, it's midnight and I'm not tired, so I'm gonna go ahead and knock the rest of this out. I think the paint's kind of dry, or mostly dry, so I'm gonna put the carpet back down and put the seats in, put the console in, and just be done with this whole thing. Great thing about not working is I don't have to worry about getting up at any particular time, so I make my own schedule. And tomorrow morning when I wake up, or tomorrow afternoon, whenever that is, this thing will be done finally. So I'm gonna get to it. So another tip, while you're back behind the dash and you have all this apart, when you have it apart, you might want to take a look at the harness connection that goes to your headlights. It's not all that uncommon for this thing to burn out with regular OEM style lights in it. I had that problem, and what happens is your high beams only work, or other weird things happen to your headlights. And I found this underneath my seat. I forgot that I threw it underneath there. But this is what happened, and why only my high beams work. So if you have that problem in the future, you might want to take a look at this. You can get at it without ripping out the whole dash. It's just kind of a pain to do. You only have to remove this panel and I think the bottom panel, and you can get to this. I can't remember all the details, but it is possible to rip it out without taking out the dash. So just something to check on, and another tip while you're behind there. And the fun thing about this is the connection, the wiring harness that goes to this is part of one of the main wiring harnesses. So unless you want to replace that entire thing, which you have to do, is cut every single wire and splice every single one. It was a lot of fun, but the lights work fine now. Alright, everything's back together and most everything works the way it should. I do have an airbag light on. I did have to resplice the wire and connect the harness underneath the driver's seat, and I had already checked the harness here earlier today, so I'm not quite sure what it could be. Maybe it's a fuse, but it's not something I'm going to worry about right now. It's not that big of a deal at this point in time. But as far as the heater core goes, it does blow hot air, just idling it for a few minutes. And my airflow out of my vents actually has improved. I'm not sure what exactly I did, or if there was just something wrong with the, since the foam was bad or the door wasn't working properly. But I wasn't getting very good airflow out of the defroster on the passenger side, only the driver's side, and now that works great. So overall, the main parts all seem to work. So happy about that. Everything's back together. And that was my biggest project, so I am thrilled that that is over and I can move on to other things.